Well, all eyes are on the Fed and in particular Ben Bernanke this week as he speaks at Jackson Hole in Wyoming on Friday, not to mention the upcoming Beige Book. But today saw the release of the latest data on US consumer confidence, of course, just ahead of Mr. Bernanke's speech. Well, joining me on the line is Sulkhan Metreveli, a senior researcher at the University of Zurich in Switzerland. Sulkhan, thanks for joining us. Can you just briefly run through the latest data with us and what it means going forward with the US fiscal cliff in mind?
So now, the first thing is that we were looking at the media sentiment prior to the announcement, and we saw that yesterday and today we had very, very positive expectations in media, and it was expected that this sentiment, U.S. consumer sentiment, would be higher than it was last month. So we actually, the media actually expected increase of sentiment, and this is always a bad sign for us. And we expected that when media and when journalists are very, very positive, we expect drop in sentiment, and we expect actually negative news to come out. And we observed for last 24 hours that sentiment was increasing all the time, the media sentiment, and this was a sign that the sentiment will drop. So and we saw that this sentiment dropped now from 65 to 60.6. And afterwards, within 1 minute, the media sentiment changed from positive to negative.
Now, this data doesn't actually really tell us anything new about the US economy as such, but it does beg the question, will any future QE from the Fed actually boost a US recovery, especially as far as the markets are concerned?
Yeah, well, I would not agree with you that it does not tell us anything about the U.S. economy, because it is very disappointing data, and expectations were that the data would be good, and now we see that U.S. economy, in minds of U.S. people, it is not doing as good as we expected. And this tells us a lot about U.S. economy, and I think that the policy of quantitative easing, for instance, should continue. And my expectation is that Fed will continue the policy of quantitative easing because of these disappointing data. And now we see the shift of media sentiment and market sentiment, and because media sentiment and market sentiment they are correlating very strongly with each other. So we see a shift and shift. We had positive sentiment, and now we have negative sentiment. So this will increase pressure on Fed and Ben Bernanke to continue the policy of quantitative easing in months to come. Maybe not in September, but in months to come, in several months probably, yes.
Now, you spend a lot of your time examining the markets and looking at how news can change or affect sentiment. When important economic data like this is released, or when we hear, for instance, that a big central bank is about to make an announcement on stimulus measures, how is your research helping others to understand such market reactions?
What we are trying to do is not only to analyze the texts and the announcements of central banks, but to predict what they will speak about. This is our research about. We try to predict what will be their tone and what will be the policy, and whether there will be some change in policy. This is the research about, and we know that such data, this media sentiment, that shift in media sentiment, like now from positive to negative, affects the statements of central banks. What we have here, you see the financial sentiment, and this is some kind of code book which we developed for forecasting of media mood and change in moods. We are measuring mood of media and social media also, like Twitter and Facebook, and also the terminals, for instance, and we look what is the current sentiment on the and how it will change. And we observe that when the sentiment is very, very positive, like we have 80% positive sentiment and 20% negative sentiment, then the price will sharply drop. This doesn't make sense when I speak about this, but this is like this. When people are too confident, and when journalists and when media is too confident, then the opposite happens, and we get some disappointing data, and then markets simply drop afterwards. And this is quite constant what we observe now.
Finally, Sulkhan, for those watching who have as much interest in the markets as you do, any thoughts ahead of the ECB meeting next week in Frankfurt?
I think the data, I was looking at it yesterday, and the media sentiment in regard of this meeting was negative. So I expect that nothing new will happen, and the policy, they will continue the usual policy as they had right now. There will be nothing disappointing, and there will be nothing really positive what will shift markets in positive direction, and we will continue this momentum which we have right now. This is my expectation for this next meeting.
Well, thanks for that, Sulkhan, and of course for joining me today. That's it for now from me. Keep checking back when you can for the latest updates and interviews here on Dukascopy TV. But for now, goodbye.